alive. How's it going?
Good, mate. How's things?
Yeah, not too bad.
Actually, Dave, are we live on YouTube yet?
We are just going live. Why?
I was just going to have some banter with Robbie, but we'll leave that till later.
This is about it's before the watershed.
Yeah, it's R-rated stuff. Like, we better keep it under wraps.
Marlon, Robbie's another organizer at Morning Startup.
Hey, Robbie, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, Marlon. Yourself?
I'm very good.
Reading the description of what you're about to present today, I have to say, intriguing to say the least.
We're live, so we're live on YouTube now. So we are all good. So let's let the beautiful people of WA in broadcast, wherever they may be. I might be over east. Here we go. Let them all wander in. 6.
All right. Looking at the participants now.
All the beautiful people of Perth.
That's right. Jürgen, Susan, Braden, Trent. Hey guys, how you doing? Carrick. All right. Rolling. Let's get this underway. Hey. So welcome to Morning Startup, everyone. My name is Scott Glue. I am here with Dave Newman and Robbie Nolan, who we haven't seen for a little while. Hey, Robbie.
Hi, folks. Nice to be with you this morning.
Excellent. So yeah, we organise Morning Startup, which is a meetup group in Perth, WA, specifically for Perth startups. Rain, hail or shine, we get together every 2 weeks and talk about things that are interesting for startups. Today we've got a cool story. We've got Marlon Juenemann, who's here as well.
Hey, guys.
He started a startup in Iran a few years ago, and he's got a crazy story of how the government and the political developments just pulled the market out from under them and how they pivoted and survived. And yeah, it's an intriguing story, and I can't wait to hear more about it. I've only heard a little bit so far. But before we get into it, we would just like to share a couple of things. So introductions and shameless plugs. If you are in the meeting, please use the Zoom webinar chat to put anything you like, really. Put a shameless plug, what you're working on, anything you need help with, something that you've produced and you want to share, that would be great. And just introduce yourself to the group. We've also got a Q&A panel. So use the separate Q&A panel in Zoom if you want to ask Marlon any questions during the presentation and after, and leave the chat section just for chit chat. That'll be great. Okay. Now,
Brilliant.
Marketing.
So do you want to lead with this one, and I'll do the next one.
Sure. Okay. So if you can, go to ammo.marketing and find your way to the Weird Growth podcast and subscribe to that. There's some really, really good interviews with Perth-based founders and innovation folk to keep you inspired and going throughout the day. Also check out ammo.marketing for their marketing services. If you need help, whether that's validating your idea or hitting the accelerator and getting some more customers through the door, then check out Ammo Marketing. They are helping us take Morning Startup online during these times. So thank you very much to Ammo Marketing for all your support of Morning Startup.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the free merch as well. I keep seeing on LinkedIn and see a few of these caps popping up. If you're not in the merch crew or an Ammo Marketing hat, I'm sorry you're not with the With crowd. Robbie, we will have to get you there very quickly.
I've had reassurances from Cam that it's on the way. He's taken my address and everything. So he's probably saving me an elite version. It's probably going to be gold.
It's gonna have like either beer cans on the side of it or something like that with some straws coming down. That's what
I was going to think he's going to get it delivered with the bodyguards like Gaddafi had or something like that, just to kind of be along the ammo team.
Or like the Mets cheerleading team or something like that.
Yeah, like on gold-plated Kalashnikovs and stuff like that. Just a big fanfare when they arrive at my hat. So I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant.
Stay tuned.
Get all over that, Cam, please. We want to see it. Awesome.
And also another company with some great merch. So I don't know if we can see this, but to Beecham Group for these cool stubbies here. Not that that's what they do. They produce awesome stubbies for your cold beers. But Beecham Group, boutique recruitment company. If you're looking for your next job or you're looking to recruit, then check out Glenn and team at Beecham Group. Again, great supporters of the WA startup ecosystem here. I know that I'm constantly on the phone to Glenn trying to find out, what's going on in the marketplace, how much should I be paying, and Glenn is great for that. Check out beechamgroup.com for more information. And again, thank you, Beecham Group, for paying for our meetup as well. So, like I said, the reason that we've got these sponsors is, like I say, meetup or Morning Startup is a completely free event it's run by the members for the members, or run for the community, and it does cost us a little bit of money to host it. It costs us to run the meetup. They charge us. It costs us for Zoom. So Beecham and Ammo basically help us cover those costs. So thank you very, very much to those guys. Big shout out.
Appreciate it. Okay. Besides Ammo and Beecham, there are a lot of organizations that just support Morning Startup and support the Perth startup ecosystem. So you probably already know all about these guys by now, but Startup News, please go to startupnews.com.au and subscribe to their newsletter. They're putting out regular news about what's happening in the Perth startup space. Also, if you have a story, shoot it to Startup News. They're always looking for great content and people doing interesting things in Perth. So that'll get you a good dose of exposure as well. Likewise, head to techboard.com.au and make sure you claim your company's profile. If you have an announcement to make, chuck it on Techboard, and that will go out to their audience, which is more down the investor route. So if you're looking for funding, it's a great platform to get behind. And same deal with Business News Western Australia, or just Business News. So send your story to Business News, and they've got columns and things dedicated to Perth startups. So another great way to get some exposure.
So have you done all of them?
No, I just did the 3. So Space Cubed, Voltage, and Niche.
Space Cube, Voltage, and Niche. Right, cool. Okay, and you did Business News.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Did you use Startup News? Sorry, I was too busy drinking my coffee.
I'll tell you what, Dave, introduce Voltage Espresso.
Oh, look, if I could, I would be drinking Voltage Espresso. When we get up and go, I think they're open again now in the city. If you are in the city, then go along to Voltage Espresso. Normally when everything was normal, we would say, mention Morning Startup and they'll give you a discount. But unfortunately, don't ask for the discount, pay more, as I said, and maybe buy 2 of them and buy a sandwich or buy a beautiful muffin there. But go and check out the guys and girls at Voltage Espresso. It is, and I'm not biased, it is probably one of the best coffees in WA, probably, or Australia. I'd definitely say that. So
agreed.
Go and see those guys there.
Smashing. Hey, Robbie, do you want to take Space Cubed or Niche? Just put you on the spot.
Space Cubed, yeah. Space Cubed have been a long time supporter and kind of the town hall and the center of the startup community here in Perth. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. They've been supporting us and giving us the space for free for such a long time now. We feel hugely indebted to them. And thanks to Brody and all the great team, fantastic team of supporters there to kind of help us put it on every 2 weeks. And we really, really look forward to when we can get back and join them, be there in the flesh again when all this stuff blows over. So thanks guys at Space Cubed, and of course Jürgen at Niche Interview. If you go to nicheinterview.com, you're going to see a lot of historical Morning Startup presentations, as well as other recordings of startup events and interviews of influence within the startup space that you'll get a lot of value and great content from. So, and Jürgen obviously presented to us 2 weeks ago as well, and an absolutely fascinating presentation that had my mind blown anyway. So thanks to Jürgen again for all the support, and go to nicheinterview.com for all those previous interviews.
Fantastic. Yep. Thanks, guys. Okay, so any announcements? If there are any announcements, any startup events coming up, anything you'd like to share, please put them in the chat and we'll give them a shout out. This is also going to YouTube as well. So if you go to youtube.com/morningstartup, this is going live on YouTube. So please feel free to share that link around and get other people watching. That'd be great. But yeah, any announcements, throw in the chat. Dave, Marlon, Robbie, do you have anything that's worth announcing at the moment?
Yeah, if anyone knows of any vessels that are heading towards Fremantle ports that they'd like to declare in advance, they might have health issues on board, please do let us know before they actually dock. That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep.
Touche. No, I definitely, like, before those of you who before we have a bit of a banter before we click record and go broadcast. And one of the things, it just felt a bit like my backdrop was actually the scene from Groundhog Day. It kind of feels like that. So I can't wait to get back into Space Cubed and just get to kind of meeting with people again, and been sat here for sort of 12 hours a day, doing Zoom calls and meeting calls. So yeah, I can't wait, and hopefully we can start to get some really cool events going again.
Yeah.
Just
what about the +8 thing happening tonight, Dave? That's a private
yeah,
thing?
I'm not sure actually. If it's an open invite, I will definitely make sure we get it out. I'll hit up Holly. If you're on listening to this, then let us know. But yeah, tonight there is good luck to all the teams and the companies that are pitching for a space. I think one of the awards is a space or a golden ticket into next year's boot camp for the +8s piece. So yeah, good luck to all the +8s sprint companies there. So really looking forward to seeing what's going on with them tonight. So that starts at 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock tonight. So I'm one of the judges. So I think Marlon is as well. So looking forward to sort of seeing some of the talent that's coming through the ranks.
All right, terrific. Well, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so we'll press on. If you want to contact us, you can do so. We're Morning Startup on all the things. Please send us a Facebook message, a tweet, Slack, email. If you want to present here one day, we'd love to talk to you more. Or if you have a topic that you'd like us to put on, that would be great. Speaking of topics, so in 2 weeks' time, we've got Mike Kyriakou. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's going to be talking about AI. So he actually runs a AI class at the University of Berkeley in California. So he's going to be distilling that class down to 3 main takeaways to help you see how you can use AI in your startup. Anyway, it's going to be a really interesting talk. So please go to meetup.com, click the Zoom link and register for that one. Also go to perthstartup.com.au. That's a Slack channel for Perth entrepreneurs. Yeah, some good discussions going on in there, so please get behind it. All right. Well, without further ado, I sort of introduced him earlier, but we've got Marlon Juenemann today, who's going to be talking about his story of launching a startup in Iran and things going crazy and pivots and survival and all of that interesting stuff. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass over to Marlon. Marlon, do you have the option now to share your screen?
Yes, let me try. Looking good.
Can't see it yet. See your screen. See you. It's
that
coming.
Should be it, right?
Beautiful.
We got it.
All right.
All right. Over to you, Marlon.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. And thank you very much for everyone getting up so early for Morning Startup. I guess the name really describes the time of the day. I want to thank, first of all, Scott and the Morning Startup team, of course, for giving me the opportunity to telling our story here a bit. And I would also like to thank the Perth startup scene for the very warm welcome to here. It has been amazing how supportive people have been and how open. So I'm very thankful for that, coming from the outside. Also for you to know, this is my first kind of online presentation without actually being able to face the audience, which is a new experience. So bear with me there. And also please feel free to ask any questions. I think Scott and Dave will kindly support me from the chat to actually direct them to me at any stage. So yeah, let's go from there.
Absolutely.
1 second. So here we go.
So just on that, guys, again, use the Zoom chat for chit chat, but the Q&A for any specific questions for Marlon, and we'll shout them out as we go.
So yeah, first of all, the interesting part about the title of this presentation was that actually Scott and I had agreed to do this before COVID, thanks to Charlie Gunningham, actually, who I think is also in the audience. He had actually said, why don't you talk on Morning Startup, you know, about the story was saying, well, think starting a startup in Perth is hard. What about Iran? And then it took a while until we got together and we actually decided to do this. So by that time, COVID had been around. And I really hope that some elements of this story might help you during these times. I really intend today to tell the story that we have seen in a very different market, and hope that you can maybe take out some interesting pieces of advice for your current situations that you're all facing. The agenda for today is I would like to first briefly introduce myself. Then I will give you guys a couple of quick facts about Iran, because there's probably quite a lot of question marks of what that country is all about. I want to give you a quick overview there. And then I would like to go into the story of Gibbet, which is a payments company, a fintech. And there I will tell you about, how it all started, and then how we grew, and then also how we went into a situation where suddenly we had to fight for survival. And there I will tell you how we coped with that and also what we learned from that. And in the final part, then I would like to tell you what I hope you might be able to take out of that experience. As said, a brief introduction about myself. I'm actually from Germany originally, but I was very lucky to live life as kind of a global citizen. I traveled around a lot in the world due to my father's job. I lived in many, many countries, and I think that is something that I really still cherish, getting to know new cultures and dealing with them. During my university time in Vienna, actually, I met my business partner, Hossein Nabavi. He's Iranian. Until then, I didn't hear much or didn't know much about Iran at all. I knew that it was somewhere in the Middle East. That was as much as I knew about it. Only then I found out that it is quite an interesting place, and I will tell you in the next slides some facts about that. We started together as students, actually, Ilya Corporation, which is a strategy boutique consultancy firm. And we have been doing that for the past 12 years. We have done around 120 large scale projects in all kinds of industries and with all kinds of companies. And when international companies started to come into the market, we actually supported them with their strategic market entry. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we started Gibbet, a payments company, and that one I will go into detail with. I'm also currently a +8 mentor of the accelerator and pre-accelerator program. And one thing that I really learned from the Iranians is, that success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is really the courage to continue that counts. And I believe that is a very important quote for these current times. One thing I would like to point out here as well, as you can see, there is a picture of a part of the Ilya Corporation core team, and they're all smiling. Like, one thing that I realized about Iran when I would go back to Germany and I would show people pictures of what I was experiencing there, a lot of people remarked, wow, people are smiling there. I started to think, okay, what is that all about? Because really, at the end, Germans, we don't smile that much as Iranians do. And I think that is kind of the picture that people have of Iran, of people that are, serious and unhappy and angry or something like that. So here you can see what young Iranians actually look like. And maybe last thing to the introduction, you might wonder, what am I doing here in Perth? So I'm here because of the love of my life, and I think she might be listening in, actually, so I better do a good job. So let's move on to the next slide. Scott, you would let me know if there's any questions or if I should,
Yep, I will do, absolutely. So guys, just post it in the Q&A section and the chat for chit chat.
Great, thank you very much, mate. So yeah, let's go into it. So some quick facts about Iran. I think one of the most important things to understand about that country is that Iran makes up 1% of the world's population, but it actually holds 7% of the resources of this world, which is a humongous amount. And this is also one reason why it is a very important geopolitical country, like from the geopolitical angle. What is interesting about Iran as well is that it has quite a large population, about 83.7 million. And a large proportion, 68% of those are actually below the age of 39. So it's a very young population, which makes it a very interesting consumer market. And this is also one of the reasons for actually Goldman Sachs putting Iran as part of the next 11, which are the next 11 countries to watch out for after BRICS with the highest growth potential. The interesting part about Iran as well is that it is surrounded by many, many countries, and they accumulate for around 450 million inhabitants, and Iran is smack in the middle of that. So that makes it like potentially a very interesting export hub and kind of a center of the Middle East. And this is what eventually maybe one day will happen as well. We will see that. So these are just some general facts about Iran that I think a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know those beforehand. Surely it is one of the last very isolated markets, like it had been opening up in the past years when the US administration actually signed a deal with Iran that there will be no sanctions anymore, and a future of thriving economic exchange, which sadly has changed a bit, and that also impacted our business. But during the time when international companies flocked to the market because it was seen as the El Dorado of the Gulf and the next massive opportunity, it was really amazing to watch what happens when one of the largest still isolated economies starts to open. So maybe you want to check out some more facts about that country. I think it is quite an interesting place. But yeah, this is not what the presentation is about today. Today, I would like to talk about the fact that we saw an opportunity in that market. We had been in the market for quite a while with our consulting firm. And when we started to see that, a young, thriving startup scene was developing, we thought, okay, we have a very good network, and we have a service company that is doing well. At that stage, we were about 50 consultants in Ilya. But surely consulting has a certain scalability ceiling. So we started to think, what else can we do? And the opportunities started to accumulate. Like for you to know a couple of facts. So the internet penetration rate in Iran is at 71%. Mobile penetration rate is at 113%. So most young people have, smartphones, and they actually often have VPNs, and they are seeing what is going on in the world. And this is where we saw, okay, we have to become a part of that emerging trend. And what started to happen in Iran about 4 or 5 years ago was that a first unicorn started to emerge. It was called DigiColor, an Amazon clone. And they were growing extremely fast. Today they have around 4,000 employees, and they have 20 million unique visitors a day. And another one that started to emerge shortly after was Snap, which is the Uber of Iran. And their one step that is quite interesting, I think, is that they have more than 1 million rides a day. I believe in Tehran, the capital, it is the highest ride amount in any major city in the world. So very interesting because there is very little competition in the markets, and because of the fact that sanctions were there for a long time, the local startup scene had the opportunity to develop their own versions and clones of concepts that would work in the West. And when we observed that from the perspective of a consulting firm, seeing the stats and so on, we said, okay, we have to become somehow a part of that. So what we did is we invited over our friends from China, a good old German friend actually, who had established a VC in China, and they did seed investments for the past 12 years there. And based on their experience, I wanted to get some kind of an assessment of what they thought. And when they came to Iran and saw what was going on there, you know, they said, wow, like we have to be a part of this because this is like China 15 years ago. So we started to look at best practices in China. And at that time, Alipay was really starting to become a mass consumption tool. And Chinese actually made Alipay part of their daily life and opened that app around 4 to 5 times a day. And we started to investigate that because we thought that it is the time in Iran to introduce something like that. The main criteria why we chose that area, fintech, is really that we wanted to pick a high barrier to entry infrastructure project because we had different to many people in that market at that stage, you know, access to capital. We had access to know-how through the VC and the Chinese market. And we had established quite a good network, which surely you need to establish a fintech company, especially in a place where there is no fixed regulation yet, which we saw as the opportunity, as well as, of course, a certain risk, because, yeah, you are the first one to walk that path. So it's really a kind of a pioneering situation. So based on a 20-slide pitch deck, at that stage, we actually managed to raise more than 1 million euros, which at that time was the highest seed funding round in the Iranian market. And I believe it was possible because at that time the sentiment was, you know, that Iran will open up. So a lot of international players were were screening the markets quite closely. And also, I think because of the network that we had established and the story that we could tell, it was quite compelling together with the demographics of the Iranian market. It was quite a quick exercise, actually, to my surprise. Let me go to the next slide then. This is where the Acent happened, because our assumption was right that a fintech solution was needed at that time. We were at the right time, at the right place in that sense. Surely it was a very, very difficult start. I thought, you know, once you raise the first round, that's it. But I learned that actually once the first round comes, that's when the real problem starts, because we had to transfer core banking technology from China to Iran, which took us about a year. It was very tedious because we had you know, Chinese documentation, Chinese technology, which was very far advanced, but it was a very different attitude to what Iranians saw in fintech. And Iranians, in that sense, are quite confident. They thought that they knew how to do it better. So it was a massive challenge, especially for us coming from a consulting background, suddenly having to become startup entrepreneurs. So it took some getting used to, but after about a year, we had a first MVP in the market, and it had basic functionality. It was an app with which you could, you know, top up your mobile phone, you could pay bills, and you could do peer-to-peer transfers. Within about 10 days, we had 30,000 users, which clearly showed that there was a high demand. We barely had any marketing dollars spent for those 30,000 users, which showed that there was the demand and the right time for this kind of solution in the market. It was great, of course, when that growth started happening. We grew from 0 employees to about 100 within 9 months, which was partly quite overwhelming. But I think we managed well on all ends. There was fires to put out, but it was actually a very high intensive and exciting time. We gained in those 9 months about 350,000 users. We had the hockey stick growth to show for. And the interesting part was as well that we had in Iran a user acquisition cost of around 50 cents per user, whereas in China at that time it was at around 50 euros. So when we showed the demographics, the user acquisition costs and our MVP to the Chinese, it was quite simple to raise additional funds. We raised around another 3 million funds in the coming months. A very exciting time, high intensity, quick growth, problem solving all over, and really starting to see that it is all about the execution, because everyone, I believe, can have a great idea, but to put it into place, that's where the skill lies. And we had to learn that very, very fast at an immense pace. Well, and then this is where I would like to take you to the part where, you know, it became interesting, because we were on a very steep ascent, and suddenly though things changed. There was a massive political change. Trump became the president of the US, and from the beginning started to threaten that he will rip up the deal that the US had made with Iran and the other permanent members of the UN, called the JCPOA. He started first threatening. So that's when first companies in Iran that came from abroad were starting to become nervous, because there was a lot of questions in regards to how he would snap back the previously agreed terms, so that maybe, you know, for example, bank transfers would become illegal under American law again. So companies, especially multinationals, started to leave quite soon after Trump rhetoric. It took a while until he actually, you know, reimposed sanctions. But by that time, people had already partly changed their mind about Iran from a high potential to a unknown future kind of place. And so the sequence of political events went like this. First, there was the withdrawal from the JCPOA. And then there was the reimposition of the sanctions on Iran by the US. Then there was the threat of war. And this is actually something I quite vividly remember, because I was in the market, and I get a call from my dad, which usually my dad never calls me. It's always my mom who calls me, and she is the communicator. But he says, son, maybe it is time for you to come back, because the Abraham Lincoln, one of the largest aircraft carriers of the US, was standing in the Persian Gulf waiting for you know, instructions of what to do. So there was an actual threat of war right in front. And it was quite a crazy feeling, because, you know, you're sitting in a place where the day before everything was on the growth path, and suddenly you are fearing that maybe you cannot get out of that country in a couple of days. However, at the same time, it's peaceful. People are not threatened by it. Iranians are quite used to be under the threat of war. And they say to me, you know, well, that has always been like that, and we're easy about that. But from my perspective as a German and not being from that country, it was quite a discerning time. I chose to stay for quite a while after that, because I really wanted to show to the Iranians as well that I will, for the sake of our business, stick around. It was not the easiest time for my parents, and eventually I also said to them, okay, let's maybe go out and wait and see what's going to happen. Then there was, I think at the beginning of this year, the assassination of a major Iranian general, and that was when things really escalated, and you know, the threat of war became more and more likely statistically. So which we in our kind of risk management did not see that is a high probability. However, you can imagine that that gives you some uneasy nights where you really think, what is going to happen here? It was quite a gruesome experience as well to see what kind of a disruptive effect this had on the economy. You know, the economy deteriorated within 3 to 6 months at a pace that I'd never seen. And it was the first time that I could see what happens when hyperinflation kind of kicks in. If you would go to a restaurant, suddenly, you know, every day they would change the menu, and prices were hiked up 100% on nearly a weekly basis. That's when you really feel what inflation means. Almost all international companies left within the next couple of months, because they said, we don't know what's going to happen here. They did not see the future anymore in Iran that they had seen before. And that was partly a very gut-wrenching experience, because you have built this company for about, at that time, Ilya, we were for 9 years, and Gibbet for 2 years. Like, it was quite hard to swallow that pill and to see it unfold in front of your eyes. What I found quite interesting as well is that people in Iran first were very easygoing about it, and then you could suddenly or slowly see that the feeling of, you know, powerlessness set in, which was very interesting to observe as well as a bit of an outsider, how that sets in. And, you know, I saw similar kind of effects happening here by COVID, but I will get into that later. What happened for us specifically as Gibbet is that, you know, our investors became increasingly worried, and they were reluctant then to participate in further rounds, where before it was a no-brainer to them. Suddenly they saw on a daily basis on the news aircraft carriers standing in front of their country. So, you know, we had to go really from a fast-growing, agile, high-growth, blitz-scaled company into pure survival mode. And that is where I will tell you in the coming slides a bit about how we dealt with that. So maybe some of the things that I just mentioned actually might sound a bit familiar to you, I guess. I really think what we felt was an impact on all levels, a sudden deep change. There was hopelessness. There was no control over the situation, which is quite a new feeling, or was a very new feeling at that time. And I'm sure for many of you, that is the feeling right now, or has been in the past months, because something changes on a level where you have no influence on. And especially in the Western world, we are not used to that kind of feel of no control. Also, there was a mass shock happening, I guess the same like in our situation right now with COVID. Now I would like to go to the parts where I would hope that maybe you can learn from our experience to cope a bit better with what is currently going on. What we really learned as a team, what I learned as a person from that experience, was that in the first step, it is really hard to accept what is going on. It was very hard for me personally, actually, to understand that the high growth company that we had established was changing, that we were the stars before, and suddenly, you know, we had to struggle for survival. So that was something where I really had to learn to get over myself and my ego, even if it is not my fault, and just accept that reality. The other thing that we learned was that you have to learn, and I think that is the case for any entrepreneur anyhow, but maybe even more under these high pressure kind of situations, that you have to live beyond your comfort zone. Accept that being pushed beyond your comfort zone can be a daily kind of thing under uncertain situations, and you have to learn how to thrive on it. Actually, there, Hossein's father, my business partner's father, gave me a very nice piece of advice. He said, imagine there's a mountain, and that mountain is filled with little pebble stones, and you have to climb that mountain. So you have to go step by step over those pebble stones. And on top of that, you don't have any shoes. So he said, better get used to it and think of it as a nice massage. And I think that is really what entrepreneurship is about, and what also, a crisis situation is all about. You have to actually change your mindset in regards to enjoying being pushed out of that comfort zone. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but it took me a while to get into that kind of mode, but we eventually managed to get into that mode. I think the other very important lesson that we learned is that, you should always think how to turn a threat into an opportunity. What we took is that we said, okay, everyone else actually has the same issue that we are having right now. So it is a fair kind of competition in that sense. So we have to keep a cool head, and we have to make the right decisions. I think an interesting fact here is that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies of the US were actually established during the time of the Great Depression. And I think that comes down to the next point, which is really creativity. I think that tough times really would make you creative. You have to be creative in order to survive. And what we did in that regard, we had to sadly trim the fat of our company. We went from around 100 employees at high growth company. What I learned is that there is a lot of fat in that sense, because you have to grow very fast, so you can't be necessarily most efficient. So we had to become a much more efficient company. And we also had to pivot. What we did is we started to realize, okay, our previous model of fast growth fintech to quickly get to the stage of 1 to 2 million users, we suddenly had to think about how we can actually turn that into an organic growth company and actually become profitable. So we went into B2B instead of B2C, and that is what Gibbet is still working on today. So I think there the lesson, yes, you have to be creative, and you have to be quick, and you have to execute that creativity. Maybe take some time to think, keep a cool head, and then implement that. One of the key things that also kept us really driving was a sense of optimism. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. I have come to learn that Australians are extremely optimistic people, where I think Germans might be able to learn a few things from as well. But I see optimism not purely as saying everything is going to be fine. I think there people have to admit as well that there is a difficult situation, and you have to deal with it. You have to take it heads on. But I think in general, to see the light at the end of the tunnel is the only way to actually win that struggle and to continue. It's the only strategy that works. And me as a German, it was often my job to be optimistic in front of the team, but also, and I think that is important for entrepreneurs too, to be paranoid at the same time. I think you have to be paranoid about anything that can happen, and you have to be optimistic about the fact that you can solve any problem that comes your way. What I really learned from the Iranians is how to deal with uncertainty. If you live in a country where everything can change on a daily and weekly basis due to politics, you have to become flexible, because things change all the time. And I think this is something that we are seeing now in the COVID times as well, where before maybe you could plan in terms of 6 months, 1 year, and even 5-year planning. And now you have to plan on a much slimmer timeline, which I think will test which people are flexible and adaptable, and which companies and which are not. what we also took out of the experience was the value of team. I really think you can use tough times to bring a team together. I think it is really important to be honest and transparent. We always talked openly to our team, even if we didn't know all the answers, but we openly communicated that we are thinking about it and that we are thinking about strategies, and we involved them in that, and always gave them as leaders the comforts that we will solve the problem. But we also admitted that at this moment in time, we're not sure what's going to happen. So we have to be flexible and optimistic and all the points before. The last point that I learned there is, for me, that really hope and belief is everything. And if you are in a situation where you don't know what is going to happen in the future, if you don't have hope and if you don't believe that it will get better, I think that's the end of it. This is where I would maybe like to give a little anecdote from my Iranian friends who said there's two people swimming in the ocean and they're drowning. And one guy says, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the other guy says, there is a tree. And the other guy says, well, there cannot be a tree because we're in the ocean. And the other guy says, well, there must be a tree. There must be a tree. So there must always be the hope that you can find a solution. Let's go to the second last slide, where I would like to maybe wrap up a bit what I hope that you take from that experience. I really think that people in this situation need to change their mindset to risk equals opportunity. That's as an entrepreneur and at the current situation of COVID. I really believe that once your mindset changes, everything on the outside will change along with it. And I saw that transformation in ourselves. First, you know, we were hopeless, there was fear. Once we actually believed that we can survive and that we will survive, when we changed our mindset, that is when our company had a future and hope again. I think, as previously said, is this situation needs to be accepted that it is happening, even if you don't want to believe it. But I really think that you do need to act. People who just react will not succeed in that experience, I think. I truly believe that risk equals opportunity, and you need to gear your mindset towards that. I also really think that you need to savor the feeling of confidence that you can handle any situation. If I talk to our teams now on the ground in Iran, seeing that we have survived through all of this, on top of that COVID at the end, by the way, I didn't even mention that, of course, that had a massive impact on Iran as well. But the fact that we are still there, that gives our team so much confidence that they can actually handle any situation. If we can handle this situation, what can we not handle? And, you know, the hope for the best, like, I think you need to hope for the best, but you definitely need to be ready for the worst. And this is where I would like to maybe go a bit to the graph on the side as well. I haven't decided yet for myself really where globally we are as a global community in terms of our stand towards COVID. It seems like everything is on the up now. And that is where the optimist in me says that is what is happening. On the other hand side, if I look at all the economic stats and what is going on in countries like Germany and the US, I really think that the worst times might still there to come. That's my paranoid part talking. My optimist says we're over it. I think we need to be prepared for both. And I think entrepreneurs need to be prepared for both. I really have learned in that humble experience to be thankful for what you have, because you can always be thankful for something that you have, and that definitely gives you the room for optimism. I think you should never lose hope. As said, that is the most important part, and especially as leaders and entrepreneurs in this society. The last point is I really had to learn how to enjoy the roller coaster ride, may it be of entrepreneurship, but also the world that we're living in. Enjoy it when it goes up, but also learn to cherish somehow when it goes down. It's hard, but that is where I think the mindset can be the challenge. All right, so this brings me to the end, or maybe also the beginning. That's how I would like to see it. One key point, Ilya and Gibbet, we're still here and we're fighting. I really think that persistence is the key in life as well as an entrepreneur. We managed to save 50 to 60 jobs out of our total of around 140 at our peak time of those two companies. We had to let go of a lot of people. It was very sad and it was a very tough job, but they understood as well, and we are always in contact with them to hopefully change things when the economy picks up again. We really believe that if we survive, we will be best positioned for when it goes up again. And that is all we think about. That's all both companies think about. I do believe that sometimes survival in itself can be a strategy, even though there is a lot of different opinions about it. But I think especially in a market like Iran, and maybe especially in a situation like COVID, survival can be a strategy in itself. We had investors that actually are supporting us, so we managed to close a final round with our key and lead investors so that we have enough cash for about 1.5 to 2 years. This was very hard to get to that point, but we managed it, so we will have enough cash for hopefully seeing things change on a political landscape. Let's see what happens in November. And the last thing I would like to say, something my dad actually always mentions to me, is, you know, it always gets better at the end, and if it's not better yet, it's not yet the end. Thank you, guys. I hope that gave you some lessons learned, and I hope that you can take something out of that experience.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Yeah, well done. I think,
wow.
Yeah, it's very insightful, very inspiring as well. So there's a few questions here. Everyone's putting in the chat. A couple of questions. So for yourself, where are you at the moment? Obviously, what's in it for you? Where are you? Where to next, basically?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually in Perth here, and the reason for that is first of all because as said, the love of my life, she lives here, so that's why I'm here. So I'm starting to also get a foothold in the Perth startup scene. I am a mentor at the +8 program and so on. I'm seeing what we can do with our previously gained experience in other markets. The reason for that is not because I've left the business. I am actually a silent founding partner. And by the way, we actually established a third company, Ilya Academy, which is an educational company. That's something I forgot to mention on top of it. So we didn't just say we're going to survive, but we actually established a new company too. But my job has become more of a strategic gearing job for Gibbet, Ilya, and Ilya Academy. Until times change, the issue or the reason for that is really that my contribution as an international person who before brought investors, connections, and so on to the market is not as needed during these times. So I'm focusing more on what we can do with our experience outside of Iran, which was something that we always wanted to do anyhow. So yeah, I'm here in Perth, and I'm looking in Australia for interesting startups and for interesting partners to see what can be done.
Brilliant. There's a question here from Nick. What's the working culture like in Iran? Is it hardworking enough comparing it to the West?
It's definitely a very different culture. Iranians are, and my Iranian friends will forgive me for saying this, but they are the greatest storytellers. They're extremely good at telling stories. But then when it comes to conduct and actual execution, it's a very different thing. And that is, I think, something that differentiates our companies there as well. And that's why people love to work together with us. But surely the culture is very different. There's cultural aspects that I had to learn about, which was not new to me though, because I had to adapt to many different countries that I lived in. So it is different, but at the end, people have the same qualities and the same hope and the same vision, that is to get a good education for their kids and to have a future. So on a human level, it's the same, but on a cultural level, I had to adapt to several things. I have to say there that what I learned through my experience in operating in different markets is that like the local part is being done by my business partner and my team there. I would not boast that I have by now understood how Iran functions. I say maybe after 12 years of Iran experience, I understand 10% of how it works, but I work together with people who understand it 100%, and my contribution is on the strategic level by now. So to answer the question, yes, there's cultural differences, but they are in any country, anywhere in the world.
Oh, and I'm guessing there was no massive stimulus package introduced by the Iranian government, as we're seeing with COVID. They didn't just pour 10% of the GDP into helping you keep employees and things like that.
Exactly. I really think this is what I see being here, and you know what is happening in Germany. You know, like we are so lucky that we have actual support. Like in Iran, the support becomes the family. And they're used to this and they will survive this. But like I think sometimes we should look at how well off we are, where we don't have to worry about if we can eat tomorrow, just because a political change happens or because things happen on a major scale. I think we are very lucky there. Yes, in Iran, people are struggling. Of course, the government is trying to do its part, but it is different to what is going on here in Australia.
So there's another good question here from Nick. What's the taxing situation like in Iran? How much tax do you pay the government? What's the standard rate?
The standard rate? Well, that's very difficult to answer because there is, you know, I think there is an official rate of about 30%. But the issue was for us, especially with Gibbets, that before you know, the whole startup wave started, there was no understanding for what a knowledge company is or a startup. It wasn't understood by the tax authorities that people invest into a company and there is no profit, like 3 million go in and nothing comes out. Like they didn't understand that. So they said, okay, you have to pay 50% tax on your investment. So it's a very blurry kind of situation. Where you have to know to navigate your way around. Our philosophy was always, we will be transparent. We got into trouble partly because of that, because we had our real figures there, but we had to fight for that being seen in the right light. So the answer to the question is, I think the official rate for businesses is about 30%, but it's especially if you're an international company, if there's investment in it, there is a maybe unwritten rule as well.
Okay, brilliant. There's a question here from Paul Rhodes. Paul, can you be a bit more descriptive? Who are you referring to in that question you sent to us? So maybe just pop it back.
I think he's talking about trying to get in contact with Marlon. What's the best way to get in contact with you, Marlon, if people need help in their WA startup? Is that the sort of thing that you're looking at assisting with?
Sure, I'm more than happy to give my 2 cents. Please reach out. I think the best way probably would be via LinkedIn, which I think was on the morning startup invite as well. So please feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. Is that okay, Scott?
Yeah, for sure. I can't remember what's on the meetup page, but yeah, if you go to meetup.com, I believe down the bottom there's a thing about Marlon with his LinkedIn link.
Yeah, please feel free there to reach out. Like I'm more than happy to have a chat and to understand where I could potentially support.
And there's a question here from Andrew. Andrew, we'll ask that question offline, and if so, we will put a link out in the meetup link. We'll send a link out with the meetup group email.
So, I mean, we do have this on YouTube as well. So if you want to go back and check out some of the slides and the discussion, head to YouTube. I put a link in the chat there. So yeah, feel free to check that out and share it as well. Any other questions, guys?
don't look like there's any. We've had a few on the watching on the YouTube channel as well. So where to next, Marlon? Where what's the next sort of 6 months look like for you? Obviously, you've made home here in WA. With all the different challenges going on, both politically and medically or health. What's next for you?
So, I mean, first of all, I'm very thankful that I'm doing these times here with you Australians. Like, I'm very humble and happy about that. That I am in isolation here. I think it is one of the best places where you can be in isolation. What is next? So, I am in talks with a gentleman over here. We are thinking about potentially going into sustainable technology with a operational partner model as well as a potential fund. I am like, that would not just be Australia based, it would actually be a company that also goes into the Southeast Asia region and Europe, and eventually maybe the Middle East. I am getting involved in the startup scene here because I want to see what is around, what is happening, because I am interested to act as an operational partner as well as maybe investing into companies, although they're, you know, I want to really get a good picture about what is going on. And I am very conservative in that sense, being German. So I want to understand first the landscape, but that is what I'm doing. Before COVID, I traveled quite a bit to Melbourne and Sydney as well, to understand, the whole VC scene and what kind of interesting startups are there, what kind of technologies are interesting.
Brilliant.
Terrific.
Good.
There just is one more question here from Charlie. When did the COVID beard begin? Was that just for COVID, or did you have you had that beard a long time since you met Charlie in school?
Sorry, I didn't get the question, Scott.
When did the beard, when did the beard start?
Charlie wants to.
Just on that, there's a lot of pictures doing the rounds at the moment. I saw one the other day. It's like I hadn't seen him for a while, and he put a picture on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and like he just looked like a different person. He'd grown this beard, hair was out here. It's like watching a shearing of a sheep. It's like, oh, that's Pete. I remember you. So Charlie's asking, when did the beard come along?
Okay, so the beard, well, that is one part of the cultural thing. So in Iran already had that beard, but it definitely increased in size, and it has actually been trimmed. So it was bigger. I think I'm trying to compensate a bit for not having any hair on there. So it is nice finally to having something again that I can groom and take care of. Because the top hair, I think, is sadly has been lost, partly due to the whole Iran experience, I must say. I think that cost me quite a few.
Brilliant.
Nice.
Okay, well, I think that's, if there's no more questions, we're at 35 past the hour. If there's listening here, just reading Susie.
Jesse just says, what's your opinion on the investment environment? Not sure if he's meaning WA or in Iran, but maybe give us an opinion on both of those. If you're investing, in Iran or WA.
Well, sure. So I think in Iran, like due to the international situation, the politics, I think depending on how the election pans out in the US in November, and then what comes afterwards or stays, it will be maybe a flock of investment again into Iran, because it is a very interesting country. By the way, actually the Iranian stock market has outperformed any international index in the past year. So people are actually putting money into stocks there through vehicles outside, but actual investment into startups and so on has really dried up. I mean, this was one thing as well with our competition, like everyone has that same issue now in Iran. And we were lucky there that we were still at a stage where, you know, we didn't have the oil tanker yet, whereas DigiColor and Snap, I'm sure they're struggling big time because their models are all based on, you know, continuous money inflow. So in Iran, it's not the best situation right now. It is for M&A people. So a lot of people are buying out companies really cheaply right now, but you need a certain risk appetite and know-how there, I think. If I think about Australia, and in particular WA, what I've seen so far, I mean, what Derek is doing with Better Labs, like I think there's a lot of potential in this market, and that is why I'm quite interested. I think the isolation of it in some ways even is similar to Iran. So I think some of the lessons I learned there, even though very different culture and very different political situation, but some of the macroeconomic factors are comparable, especially in terms of the isolation. So I think that's an advantage and a disadvantage both together. And I'm trying still to figure if the advantage of being far away and having quite an enclosed ecosystem is more of an advantage than a disadvantage. But there, I think it's interesting signals. I think what $24 million fund by RAC with Better Labs, and you know what SpaceCubed is doing. I think the ecosystem is on the growth path, and I would like to support there as well, maybe with some of my international experience. I think it can go either way, but people are working hard, and that's what I saw in Iran as well. Suddenly, the whole ecosystem had thrived within a very short period of time. So I hope that the same will happen here with very good starting points and entrepreneurial energy. I think Australia is, and sorry, one more point I would like to add there, that I do think that the whole +8 points, you know, that's, I don't know, there's a very large proportion of the population of this world actually lives in the same time zone. I think looking out towards Southeast Asia it's a very compelling opportunity. I don't know if I mentioned, but I used to study at high school. I was in Singapore, and I am in quite close contact with my friends from Singapore. I think there's a lot of opportunity to link that. What I've seen so far is that I really think that Perth-based startups need to understand that it is a different ballgame to actually go international. It takes a different set of skills and a different mindset. But I think as soon as there will be, you know, more you know, cases such as Canva and you know, I think Bumble, is it called Bumble? Excuse me, there I don't know all the names 100% yet, but you know, there is first examples of how it could look. So I think that's a good sign. I don't know how you guys see it. How do you see it, Scott?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's in a growth stage. We've got some exciting things going on now. I mean, I've been in the space since 2011 trying to do my startup. And over that time, you know, I started Morning Startup and it was just a few guys in a coffee shop. And since then, it's, you know, we had SpaceCubed come along at the same time, and it's really grown in leaps and bounds since. So yeah, I think I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next few years.
Yeah. I definitely think from what I'm seeing and what I've learned having been on that journey is, I think there's the moment for some of the startups that's coming out. I see there's too much of a focus on trying to get investment. I think, e.g., like their focus, the time is spent on trying to find that investor versus trying to get their change that or understand their customer. I think that needs to change. The conversations I'm having with a lot of founders at the moment, it's very much focused on, we need to get investment, we need to do this, versus let's actually get the customer proposition correct. And there's a saying, I've said it before, which is if you get customers and you've got customers coming in, and I think you've proven this point, Marlon, is that you won't need to look for investors because they'll come and find you. Mm. So I think that's just anybody that's watching, it's definitely something just to keep in the back of your mind, that it's around getting that customer money is always better than investor money. So
I completely agree there, and I think this is something that is the case everywhere. Often people think if they get money, all the problems will be solved. Like I have come to learn that once the money is there, that's when the real problems start. And it's not like everything is okay then and all the problems are solved. The mindset of finding customers, you're 100% correct. The first 1,000 customers, get them. Like, work hard, show that your business model works. You know, that proof that people pay you money. Even $1 to get someone to pay you $1 is a very hard job.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Well, I will speak to you in about 12 hours, Marlon. No, less than 12 hours.
Looking forward to that.
That's right.
I am too. So it's just for everybody that's still on with us and hasn't jumped off. It is a public event. I have put the link in the Q&A below. I've just had an email from Holly. Thank you very much, Holly, for emailing me back so quickly. Apparently, tickets are sold out, so it's a sold out event. But however, if you go on the wait list, you will get an email to watch it via, I think they're going to send it out, they're recording it and they'll send out that link or stream it somehow, not quite sure, but worth registering regardless. Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
We've got AI, and that's in 2 weeks today.
Exactly. So Mike Kairiakou is going to take us through his class on AI that he usually teaches at UC Berkeley in California. So that's going to be full of interesting information, especially if you're in that space or looking at integrating AI, machine learning somehow into your startup. Yeah, be great. So thank you very much, Marlon, and thank you everyone for coming along and attending.
See your beautiful face again. We were worried about you for a bit.
Yeah, Marlon, kind of something he said resonated with me. I had my first haircut yesterday since February, so I could
be happy that you can have a haircut.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm on borrowed time, put it that way.
Yeah, I'm with Marlon. Unfortunately, it's no luxury I'll ever experience again. So.
Yeah, I definitely need the ammo cap sooner rather than later, I reckon.
They've come in very handy. That's right.
Right, gents.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you for everyone listening.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.